Much, Kareshni. And for those of you who are expecting to see Helen Ziller, I really do apologize. She unfortunately had an urgent meeting that she had to attend today, and she really is very apologetic to all of you and to the organizers for not being here today. But she believes this is a very important dialogue, and she's really looking forward to hearing what comes out of it and seeing how we can take the results of this dialogue forward. I've been asked to talk today about the root causes of women's oppression, and Helen Ziller produces a weekly newsletter called SA Today. And on the occasion of National Women's Day, the 9th of August last year, 2009, she wrote the following, and I think it's still very relevant this year and probably will be for some years to come. And then I'm going to tell you how the government in the Western Cape is addressing some of these problems. By no means all of them, but it's certainly attempting to do so. And Helen called this particular edition Failing Our Women, a tragic loss of human potential. And she says that on Women's Day, and I believe, as I said, it's relevant because we are still in Women's Month, which is why we're having the dialogue. On Women's Day, it is important to look beyond the symbolism of this public holiday and address the root causes of women's oppression. The risk of trinkets, cards, and gifts on such an occasion is that they disguise rather than address the substantive issues. Most women, not only in South Africa, but in many other countries, face major obstacles in developing their true potential. And the reason for this is that women forfeit their opportunities before they begin to use them. In fact, their careers end before they begin. In Women's Month, we should look hard at the catastrophic loss of human potential amongst South African women. For far too many of them, life's opportunities have been shut down well before their 20th birthdays. Multitudes have dropped out of school. Large numbers have become pregnant by fathers who will never support them or their children, so that both they and their babies are doomed to stunted, impoverished lives. The South African Institute of Race Relations recently published statistics on the state of the South African family. They are frightening. By 2007, only 34% of children in South Africa were living with both biological parents. 23% were living with neither. There were 148,000 households headed by a child of 17 years or younger. In 2006, more than 72,000 girls between the age of 13 and 19 did not attend school because they were pregnant. In fact, a pupil at a school in Mpumalanga claimed that 34 babies born to schoolgirls in that school were fathered by the teachers in that school. Apartheid bears much of the blame for the disintegration of the African family life. But the problem has actually been getting worse in recent years. From 2002 to 2007, there was an increase in the number of children living without a father and in child-headed families. AIDS explains a large loss of life amongst young women, but it does not explain why fewer living men were staying with and were not staying with or taking responsibility for the children they had fathered. Since ancient times, women have been subjugated. All traditional cultures, be they European, African, or Asian, are patriarchal. In South Africa, patriarchy is the one truly non-racial institution. All cultures use the same excuses to deny power, leadership, and status to women. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have the same taboos about women. These attitudes are stubborn and enduring. We believe they are rooted in our biology, us as women, on the simple fact that we as women bear the children. This fact has enormous consequences. Traditional cultures and religions have shown both prejudice and great wisdom. While they can display bigotry against women, they are also deep insights about human nature. They have instituted laws and prohibitions that protect women, strengthen family life, and advance civilization. The ancients could be extremely blunt, especially on the subject of male sexuality. You only have to see this sometimes with a bit of a shock by reading the Old Testament. We must retain ancient wisdom and reject ancient prejudice. Human progress depends both on living by the law and on overcoming deep-rooted bigotry. Probably the most single important marker of a country's progress is how it treats its women. If women had the same education as men and were given the same opportunities and status, the country will prosper and advance. But we need to break down traditional attitudes for this to happen. When a woman has her babies, and in what circumstances, is of fundamental importance to her, her children, and society at large. Traditional culture dealt with this question in great detail. There were strict prohibitions against children being born out of wedlock, or else there were some established arrangements such as lobola. The prospective father had to prove his commitment and responsibility before he was allowed to procreate. In modern societies, successful women tend to defer childbirth. They have their first baby after completing their education and usually several years into their careers. This is good for them and good for their babies, who have mature and economically secure parents. Discipline and responsibility are essential for liberation. Lack of discipline and irresponsibility can enslave us. In too much of South Africa, we have rejected ancient wisdom and kept the ancient prejudices. The ancients knew that adolescent girls were sexually attractive to mature men, and there were stigmas against their sexual union. Today in South Africa, these stigmas have been brushed aside, and mature men are impregnating schoolgirls. It is sometimes said that their sex is consensual, that the girls are seduced by the money and the status of the older men, and are persuaded that condoms are unnecessary because the older men are trustworthy. But far more often, girls feel they have no choice and must submit to the man's advances. In some poor rural schools, menstruation can end a girl's education. Lacking the knowledge and simple hygienic remedies or sanitation, girls feel scared, lonely, and defiled. They may stay away from school for their days of menstruation. Often, this leads to their staying away forever. We need a profound change of attitudes. Men must realize they do not own women. They must know they cannot compete with a woman simply because, they must know they cannot copulate with a woman simply because they desire her. Women, especially poor young women, must realize they are free agents, not beholden to any man, however old, rich, or powerful. They must know that having babies young will wreck their opportunities, and often also their lives and their babies' lives. They must realize the supreme importance of their education. Indeed, if you were to prescribe in 3 words the best single solution to a whole range of the world's most pressing problems, including overpopulation and mass poverty, those 3 words would be education of women. What can the state do? Here are 3 suggestions that should be thoroughly debated and costed to determine whether they can form the basis of public policy in the future. 1. We must enforce maintenance payments. Wherever there's a transaction that you need to show your ID, for example, opening a bank account, getting a driver's license, getting a passport, etc., network computers should be able to determine whether male applicants are in arrears with their maintenance payments. If so, they should be barred from making the transaction. That would concentrate men's minds about the consequence of making a baby when they are not able or ready to be responsible fathers. Number 2, we should create incentives for women to further their education rather than become teenage mothers. One idea to promote this outcome would be to award an educational grant of, say, 25,000 rand 2 women turning 21 years old who have a matric certificate and have never applied for a child grant. Number 3, we should bring a charge of statutory rape against any adult man who has sex with an underage girl, regardless of whether it was consensual or not. This could very well assist in resurrecting the necessary social taboo against such behavior. We have had far too many gender commissions that end up recommending more female executives in corporate management and top government positions, while evading all the big and obvious problems confronting ordinary South African women, of which male sexuality is probably the greatest. It's time to face reality on these issues and not to be cowed by male politicians who do not want to hear about rape rates or the disastrously high number of children who do not know their fathers. We've had enough of the mantra of women's liberation. What we want now is the reality. Thank you very much.